Hello, and welcome to Mr. Duncan's video podcast. In today's episode, we'll be studying the global carbon cycle. In other words, we'll be following the path that carbon takes as it travels through the atmosphere, the oceans, the earth, and our bodies. When we look from a global perspective, carbon is stored in four major areas called sinks. The four global carbon sinks are the atmospheric sink, the organic sink, the geologic sink, and the oceanic sink. Let's start by taking a look at the atmospheric sink. The atmospheric sink consists of all the carbon that's found in the atmosphere. In this sink, carbon is usually found in the form of carbon dioxide, or CO2. Of all the sinks, this sink holds the least amount of carbon, but carbon passes through this sink very quickly. Because we rely on the atmosphere to protect us from the sun and for processes such as photosynthesis and respiration, any changes to the carbon levels in this sink can lead to immediate and severe consequences for living things. This leads us to the organic sink. In the organic sink, all carbon is locked up in the bodies of organisms, both alive and dead, in the form of biomolecules like carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and nucleic acids. As most of you probably know, through the process of photosynthesis, plants utilize three things to make the food they need to survive: sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide. They pull carbon dioxide out of the atmospheric sink and through the process of photosynthesis produce sugars and other carbohydrates to store the sun's energy. Animals then consume these plants and break down some of these carbohydrates to get the energy they need to survive. This process, called respiration, is the opposite process of photosynthesis. So, one of the byproducts is carbon dioxide. Animals can't use carbon dioxide, so they get rid of it back into the atmosphere. The carbohydrates and other biomolecules that are not burned in the process of respiration are used to build the bodies of all organisms. This carbon remains trapped inside these organisms until they die. At that point, bodies will begin to decompose. Through this process, the trapped carbon gets released back into the environment. If decomposition occurs on the surface of the Earth, then most of the carbon re-enters the atmospheric sink. However, if decomposition occurs below the surface of the Earth, then most of the carbon will enter the geologic sink. The geologic sink consists of all the carbon stored below the surface of the Earth in the form of carbon-containing rocks, those fossil fuels like oil, coal, and natural gas. Because the geologic processes occur over a long period of time, carbon moves most slowly through this sink and often gets trapped for millions of years. Eventually, as a result of geologic events like volcanic eruptions or earthquakes and weathering, carbon is slowly released from the geologic sink back into the atmosphere. Or, if it occurs into the ocean, the carbon enters the oceanic sink. The oceanic sink consists of all the carbon stored in the world's vast oceans. As such, this is the largest of the carbon sinks. Carbon can enter the oceans through three primary methods: geologic events and weathering, decomposition of dead organisms and waste, or through diffusion at the ocean's surface. Carbon dioxide dissolves quite easily in water, and in the process forms many different dissolved carbon compounds, like carbonates, bicarbonates, and carbonic acid. Though the process of diffusion, the ocean acts like a sponge and absorbs carbon dioxide out of the atmospheric sink, helping to regulate the amount of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. If the amount of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere increases for whatever reason, then the oceans will begin to absorb more. And if the amount drops, then the oceans will release carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere, maintaining the appropriate level. Usually. So that's it. That's the global carbon cycle. What a ride, right? It's amazing to think that the carbon that's in your bodies has been to all those places and been here since the Earth was formed. Okay, before you go, I do have a short assignment for you to do. Take some time tonight and think about the following question, and then write your answer on a piece of paper. Excess carbon dioxide in our atmosphere is a major contributor to global warming. The oceans act like a sponge, pulling excess carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. Then how could the carbon dioxide levels increase enough to cause global warming? Alright, so next time on Mr. Duncan's video podcast, we'll be discussing the greenhouse effect of global warming. I know that you'll be dying to tune in to hear the answer to tonight's question. See you then. Over and out.